Evening all, I hope you're doing well. Just a few stories that have piqued my interest this week. Chief among them is the investigation of Darren Grimes by the Metropolitan Police. This is in relation to an interview Grimes did with Dr. David Starkey on Grimes's Reasoned YouTube channel. In it, they were talking about a number of things, but the point of contention is over one section where Starkey was challenging the notion that slavery was genocide, and that he was talking about how the word genocide, which has a very specific meaning, has been changed and twisted to mean to equate it with slavery, and how erroneous this is. And in the course of explaining that point, he used a phrase that got him into trouble, that got him branded as a racist, and subsequently he lost all his academic positions, he's lost his status as a mainstream media historian. It might down the road affect any publishing deals he may have. Now, the interesting thing is that the Metropolitan Police aren't investigating Starkey for his comments. They're investigating Darren Grimes. And this is a new development that has caught a lot of people off guard and has angered, quite rightly, a great many people. But has it angered the right kind of people that will see justice done? Well, we haven't seen much evidence of that yet. So what is Darren Grimes being investigated for? Well, apparently it's for inciting racial hatred. Now, this interview isn't new. It happened some time ago. About 2 or 3 months ago, this interview happened. And I haven't seen any reports in the newspaper of any spikes, any increase in racially motivated crimes that can be attributed to this interview. So there's a lot of people on the progressive left taking to social media, wanting Grimes to be hung out and dried over this and prosecuted by the police. And they're saying, well, he's incited racial hatred, but we haven't seen evidence of this actually happening. And it's kind of more wishful thinking on the part of the progressive left at the moment. But since when has that ever stopped the progressive left from ever doing anything? So this also has serious repercussions for interviewers, because now an interviewer, somebody interviewing a subject, is now liable for whatever that subject says, even though you can't predict what an interviewee says. You know, the interviewer just can't predict with that degree of accuracy. And another thing that's kind of disturbing from this is the response. Well, how can Grimes be responsible for something that Starkey said? Well, as the interviewer, as somebody who owns and runs the Reasoned YouTube channel, therefore Grimes is not just a journalist, he's not just a political pundit interviewing someone, he is actually a publisher, and the publisher is responsible for any output that's there. So they're saying, well, when the story broke, people accused Grimes of not pushing back hard enough on Starkey's comments at the time. Grimes ended up saying, he basically agreed with his accusers, saying Starkey was being a racist, and he disavowed himself from Starkey's comments. I don't think he should have done that, by the way, because at that time it is clear to see that what Starkey meant, he was talking about the deliberate misuse of the word genocide to mean something else rather than from its meaning. And I watched that interview, and I was more focused on Starkey's central premise rather than the choice of words he used. When he did say those words, I thought, oh, that's a bit spicy. But certainly, I don't think you can go as far as saying, oh, he's definitely racist. It was a flippant, off-colour remark at the time. Does it indicate underlying racism or deeply entrenched racism in Dr. David Starkey? I don't think you can say that from that clip. I know people will read into that because suddenly everybody's a psychology and psychic expert, and they can read just out of a few words taken out of context. They can assume all kinds of things. So I don't think Darren Grimes was right to make that retraction at the time. I think he should just have held his nerves. But on the other hand, I do understand, he's got a channel, he's got a new brand. The Reason channel was very new at that time. And so, he's protective of his brand. But I still doesn't mean I agree with his decision. I understand. But there's a lot of people in the online dissident right who want to throw Grimes under a bus and just say, well, he gets no sympathy from me, throw him to the wolves over this. I don't think they've quite grasped the implications of what happened. Because the implications are very serious here. If you're an interviewer of someone and you can be investigated and prosecuted by the police for something that your subject says, that's going to be a huge blow to any kind of journalism, any kind of interview. It changes the nature of interview and interviewee, which means that for fear of being prosecuted, interviewers and journalists will only ever choose to interview safe subjects. They will, for journalism, that there shouldn't be an Overton window of what they will investigate. They should be able to investigate anything and any subject and allow their subjects to explain what their opinions are, what their ideas are. And if suddenly we have journalists are under threat from the police, they're only going to go after soft subjects. They're only going to go after easy interview subjects. And the Overton window for journalism and reporting and news reporting will shrink. It shrunk for everything else in society. Now it's going to shrink for journalism, which should have no boundaries on what it's prepared to investigate or who it's prepared to interview. So this is very deeply disturbing. And to those members of the dissident online right who think Grimes should be thrown under a bus, you're not thinking about the bigger picture. You're so focused on what you think Grimes did wrong. You're not thinking about the wider implications. Actually, that's a theme I'm going to pick up a little bit later on in this video, about being able to see the wider implications for these kind of decisions. But on this subject, I'll just say one more thing. And that is, Grimes has put out a statement saying he feels he is being targeted by the left. And I think there's a lot of ground to believe this. Ever since his campaigning for Brexit, he was pulled before the courts to investigate alleged wrongdoings in his campaigning for Brexit. He was exonerated. And now, down the line, this has happened. Remember, there's been a big gap between when that interview went out and him being investigated by the police. And I happen to know from personal experience there are left-wing activists who have a list of people that they identify as potentially dangerous, trouble, people on the right who they don't like, who they want removed from the public discourse. And they've got people looking at every tweet, every video, every social media posting, every political activity there, and actively working to get them either get the social media accounts banned or people fired from their jobs, or even going after bank accounts. I'll talk about that in a minute, but it's happened to somebody who I know quite well. They've lost their job because these activists are constantly looking out for everything they say, tweet, or do online. They cherry pick, take things out of context, and then run along to an employer or to a business and say, don't you deal with this person for these reasons, otherwise we'll start agitating and we'll start making your life and your business hell until you cave into our demands. So yes, I absolutely believe that there are activists who have contacts in the Metropolitan Police. The police are they're up for this kind of hate crime thing because it's easy for them to do. They don't have to leave the comfiness of the police station in order to go after hurty words people on the internet. So the activists have got contacts in the Met Police. I'm not surprised that they've targeted Grimes. I also think there's a bit of bigotry involved here as well. Because let's have a look at who Darren Grimes is. Right, he's young. He's a mainstream conservative right winger. I'm not saying he's a member. I don't know if he's a member of the Conservative Party or not, but I would say small c conservative mainstream. Okay, he's pro Brexit. He's patriotic, and he's gay. And there's those things the left cannot abide. A young gay man should be a progressive left winger, and the fact that he isn't just gets under their skin. So that's why I say there's a bit of bigotry about why they go for Grimes specifically. Why don't they go for Starkey? Starkey's also gay, yeah, but he's an old guy. He's old school. He's got about another decade in him at most. So they're going after a kind of young people who are conservative, who don't quite fit their mold. It's a kind of spitefulness about it. So anyway, that's what I have to say about the Darren Grimes story. On a related note, I want to talk about HSBC, the bank, terminating the bank accounts of Laura Towler and Mark Collett, both from Patriotic Alternative. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of Towler and Collett and Patriotic Alternative. Suffice to say, I categorise them as kind of crypto-fascist. Some of the stuff they put out, wouldn't it have been nice if Nazi Germany had won the war? They're not, put it lightly, they're not my cup of tea. However, is it right to terminate their bank accounts? Now, I should add, for the purposes of accuracy, these are their business accounts. These are not their personal bank accounts. These are their business accounts that have been shut down by HSBC. But having said that, are Towler and Collett guilty of any crimes? Well, as far as I know, they have no criminal record. They are not currently being investigated for any crimes that I can think of. Certainly, you could make a case that if we're talking about inciting racial hatred, they've done certainly way more than either David Starkey or Darren Grimes have done. But however, they're not being investigated, they're not being prosecuted, have not been made guilty of crime. So the thing is, should a bank terminate business accounts of people who have committed no crimes simply on the basis that their ideology is not compatible with the bank's? Whatever that means. They're a bank, they're a business. They take people's money, they offer a service, and that's it. They don't have to agree with the ideologies of all their customers. But here's the thing. This is a good philosophical debate that we should be having. And it should be happen out in the open. It's been suppressed far too much. And that is one of the cases that you can say, we target their business accounts because that money is going to be used for activities that promote criminal activities. Now, there was a law passed a few years ago which meant that you could seize the assets of criminal bank accounts. That is, bank accounts being used by criminals for the purpose of committing crimes. But that's not what's happened in this case. What do these business accounts do for Collett and Towler? I don't know. I would suspect it's maybe a little bit to do with activities of Patriotic Alternative. It's probably the accounts where they would pay for any printing of material done, any kind of website domain fees, any kind of publicity, any kind of hiring of venues so they could hold meetings. But again, none of this is illegal. We are supposed to be in a free and democratic society. And frankly, it's not the place of companies to withhold business on the basis of what people think personally. We're in legal grey areas. I think there needs to be pushback on this. Now, if you believe in free speech, and this is a case for the Free Speech Union, there's a case for just freedom of conscience in general. If we do not, what's the phrase? Those rights we want for ourselves, we must grant to our enemies. Now, Patriotic Alternative is not an organisation I want to support, wish to support, or do support in any way. but they have to have the same basic rights as every other citizen in the United Kingdom, irrespective of their beliefs. This is corporate overreach, and I think you have to make this point on principle. Okay, and I think it needs to be restated, and I think the fight needs to be taken to HSBC. Now, as a matter of fact, I actually did write a letter to HSBC where I said in the letter, can you explain your reasons for doing this? Would you extend the policy to terminating people's personal bank accounts, not their business one, their personal bank accounts, on the basis of their political or religious beliefs? Do you think this is justified? Do you think this is justified within a liberal and democratic society? So I put it to them. I haven't received, it's been a week since I did that. I haven't received a reply. I'd be amazed if I did receive a reply. But if more people just put them on the spot, that's what you have to do. You know, when you have these corporations strutting around virtue signaling, it's the duty of everybody who believes in freedom and who believes in liberty to press these people. Why? Why are you doing it? Right, so I encourage people, just write to HSBC, a couple of paragraphs, demanding why they did this, and will they extend this to personal bank accounts, and do they think they're violating people's rights by doing this, and just put them on the spot. You just put them on the spot. Use your own words, choose your own wording, be as forceful as you like, but I think every time a company does this, you need to put them on the spot, and this thing needs to be exposed. Now, I'm going to link this back into the Darren Grimes thing, because this, as I said, there are activists who are seeking to do these things. And I did a bit of digging around, and in the case of these patriotic alternative leaders and HSBC, the activist group that was behind the termination of the bank accounts is called Eye on Anti-Semitism. So they're an activist group. They're much like Hope Not Hate and other groups of that ilk. And what do we know about these people? Who runs them? Who controls them? Where do they get their money from? I think the time is ripe for an investigation of these activist group. What networks do they have? What funding do they get, and who leads them, and what political affiliations they have to various organizations, and what kind of illiberal views do they hold? I think it's time we put these activist groups under the spotlight a bit more, because, hey, they're doing it to us, and I think it's only fair that we do the same back to them. Now, another thing that has come under my radar this week is the vexed question that we've been having the last few months of Tories versus Labour. What's the difference? And there's a lot of people, and I don't disagree with them, who are wondering, are the Conservatives at the moment any different from Labour? Have the Conservatives in the last 10 years, have they been any different from Labour? 15 years, 20 years, how are they different from Labour? And you can see every day, as Douglas Murray puts it, every day the Conservative government makes an announcement that angers Conservatives. It's very hard to find out just what makes this current Conservative Party Conservative at all. They've got, as we keep saying, they've got an 80-seat majority. And it's weird because sometimes I follow a few backbench MPs, ones I find interesting, and they're saying the same thing. You know, Darren Grimes, I think it was, is it Lucy Allen? I think MP, Conservative MP, just said, you know, Darren Grimes being investigated by the Metropolitan Police. This is insane. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, you're the government. You know, have a word. You have a word with the Home Secretary. I know the Home Secretary says he cannot comment on an individual investigation, but certainly have a word with the Home Secretary. If you're a Conservative backbench MP, have a word with your colleagues in the Home Office and just yank the Metropolitan Police's chain, just saying, what the hell are you doing? Did you learn nothing from the court decision of Justice Knowles in the wake of the offensive trans limerick case, which Knowles dismissed, and he called out the police and said it's a massive overreach. We are free and liberal society with freedom of speech. We do not have the Stasi or the Checker. He was absolutely right. So let's bring back those words of Justice Knowles and again yank the Metropolitan Police's chain. You are MPs, you are a Conservative government with an 80-seat majority. Do it. It's not that difficult. So this comes back to the point, we're seeing a lot of left-wing things happen. Yes, bank accounts are being suspended on a Conservative government's watch. We are seeing Darren Grimes being investigated by the police for something he didn't do under alleged hate incident. Very nebulous crimes. It's happening on a Conservative government watch. I could name dozens of other things that's going wrong. But here's the rub. Are the Conservatives exactly like Labour? And I don't think they are, for the simple reason that everything you hate this government doing at the moment would be 10 times worse under a Labour government. This is a party, Labour Party, that doesn't care about individual freedoms and liberties, does not care about the economy of this country other than to muck it up in a kind of implementing socialism. So they only care about socialism, they don't care about your individual rights, they only care about identity group rights. Okay, do you think Keir Starmer is a strong enough man to keep the woke brigade within his own party, within his own parliamentary party at bay? He is not strong enough. Because deep down he kind of agrees with them. He took the knee. If you just wanted a difference between the current Conservative government and the Labour government, is that Boris Johnson hasn't taken the knee and Keir Starmer did. Okay, I'm not saying that that's the justification for keeping the Conservatives in government the way they are. I don't want things to be the way they are. I want a Conservative government to be properly conservative. At the same time, I recognise the danger posed by a Labour government. Everything that you hate now will be double, treble, as I said, 10 times worse. I would not have this channel. All your favourite YouTubers will be removed, and to keep us all safe. Okay. Under the current Conservative government, we've got a little bit of wriggle room. It might not seem like much, but we do have a little bit of wriggle room. Okay. At least there are plenty of Conservatives who think that the targeting of Darren Grimes is wrong. Okay, we just need to goad them into action and make sure that the rest of the party and the rest of the government agree as well, or enough of them to stomp on the Met Police and say stop wasting everybody's time with these kind of investigations. Okay, under Labour you wouldn't get that. It will just happen. And it wouldn't just happen to Grimes, it would start happening to all kinds of people. And now, I'm old enough to remember what it was like, the difference between 1996 and 1997. When Tony Blair and New Labour came to power, everybody said, they're just like the Tories because they're monetarists and they're not ramping taxes up super high, and they're not, they're basically pro-business. But when you have a look at the legacy of New Labour, what they did on a social policy level, the infiltration of all the supposedly impartial agencies of the government, the civil service, academia, the media, what damage they did that was kept under the radar. And we're still suffering the effects of that now. Now imagine what worse, everything that you stand for, that you believe in, that you think is right, will go under the next Labour government. So that's not a defence of the current Conservative government, but I just want to alert you to the dangers, the potential dangers. If you sit back and say, well, let the Tories burn and we'll just endure a few years of Labour, it won't be like that, because we will never have this opportunity to talk about the things that we really care about in the future under a Labour government. We just won't. You have to wake up to that possibility. I know it's harsh and unpleasant, and you hate the Tories, and I understand. We've got a little bit of wriggle room before we go into a full left-wing authoritarian state. So we must use that time wisely. That's all I wanted to say on the subject for the moment. Anyway, there was one or two other things that I was going to talk about, but I realised that time is getting on and I don't want to push this to 40 minutes of just me monologuing. So that will have to wait for another day. However, just finish off with, we are in very dark times at the moment. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep telling the truth. and get off your asses. If your freedoms and your liberties mean anything to you, just sitting there griping on the internet is not the way to do it. You need to push back wherever, even if it feels futile and pointless. I'd much rather go down fighting than just to sit meekly with a bottle of mediocre red wine going, told you so. Plenty of people do that. Okay, so until next time, tell the truth, fight the good fight. Take care.